Have you ever just stopped and thought to yourself, am I surrounded by idiots? You know those people who just don't seem to get it, no matter how clearly you try to explain yourself? Well, turns out you're not alone. Today, we're diving into Thomas Erikson's huge bestseller, a book that's basically a user's guide to decoding human behavior. I mean, it's a question we've all wrestled with, right? You meet someone, and the conversation just clicks. It's effortless, it's easy, and then the very next person you talk to, it feels like you're speaking a completely different language. It's like talking to a brick wall. So, what's really going on there? Well, the author, Thomas Erikson, was right there with us. He was puzzled by this exact same thing, even way back when he was in high school. He'd look around and see friends he clicked with instantly, and then others who just felt like, as he put it, total blockheads. For years, he figured the problem was with them. But it took one, let's just say, very memorable and pretty toxic encounter to show him what was really happening. And that brings us to the story that's really at the heart of this entire book. It's about an experience that completely changed how the author saw the world. An encounter with a CEO who was 100% convinced his entire company was staffed by fools. So picture this. Erikson is just 25 years old. He gets hired to interview this guy named Stir, a super successful entrepreneur who'd built his company from absolutely nothing. The man was a business genius, no doubt about it. But he had a pretty big problem. That was one of the very first things Stir said to him. And he wasn't kidding around. Erikson kind of laughed, thinking it was just a figure of speech. But Stir's face turned bright red. Oh no, he meant it. He truly, deeply believed he was the only competent person in the entire building. And look, this wasn't just him having a bad day. It was his whole worldview. He'd go through the company, department by department, and just label everyone. Department A, complete idiots. Department B, fools who understood nothing. And this created, as you can imagine, a culture of pure fear. People learned to just avoid him, especially if they had bad news, because he was famous for shooting the messenger. In fact, it got so bad that the staff actually installed a secret warning light at the entrance. Seriously, if the light was red, it meant Stir was in his office, and people would literally just turn around and walk away. They'd rather come back later than risk having to talk to him. That's how terrified they were. But Erikson, being an outsider, he saw something that Stir was completely blind to. He noticed a huge, gaping hole in the CEO's logic, and it all boiled down to one simple, game-changing question. So the young Erikson, in a moment of boldness, just asks him, who hired all these idiots? He knew full well that Stir himself had hired most of them. The question hanging in the air was obvious. If everyone here is an idiot, and you hired them, who's the real idiot? Well, as you might guess, Stir was furious and kicked him out on the spot. And boom, that's the light bulb moment. That's the whole point. Stir wasn't actually surrounded by incompetent people. He was surrounded by people who were different from him. For him, the definition of an idiot was just anyone who didn't think, act, and communicate in the exact same way that he did. That toxic meeting was a total revelation for Erikson. He realized he never wanted to end up like Stir, a brilliant guy who was completely clueless about how to handle the most important part of any business, the people. So right then and there, he decided he was going to master the one thing that really matters, understanding how people tick. So that journey led him to discover a really powerful but simple framework for understanding human behavior. It's a system that's now been used by millions of people all over the world to make sense of each other. He landed on what's called the DISA system, though you might know it as DISC. Now, the key here is not to think of this as a way to put people into little boxes. Think of it more like a decoder ring for communication. It just sorts our different behaviors into 4 main types, each with its own color and its own preferred language. Okay, so let's quickly break these down. First, you've got the reds. They're all about dominance. They're ambitious, driven, and they want to get right to the point. Next are the yellows. Think of them as the social butterflies. They're optimistic, super chatty, and love inspiring people. Then you have the greens. They're the calm, patient, super reliable backbone of any group. And finally, the blues. They are the analysts, precise, methodical, and they need all the facts and figures before they make a decision. See how different they all are? Now, what is absolutely crucial to get is that almost nobody is just one single color. In fact, as you can see here, a whopping 80% of us are a blend of 2 dominant colors. Only about 5% of people are purely one color. So you're probably a unique mix, maybe a red with a blue side or a green-yellow. All right, so you've got this system. You can start spotting the reds, yellows, greens, and blues in your life. Now what? What do you actually do with that information? Well, this is where we get to the book's most powerful, game-changing idea. And here it is. This is probably the single most important sentence in the whole book. Everything you say, every point you make, it all gets filtered through the other person's personality, their biases, their color profile. What you intend to say matters way, way less than how they perceive it. And if you think about it, this makes perfect sense. Whatever your dominant color is, you will always be in the minority. Most of the people you meet every single day are going to be wired differently than you are. You simply can't expect the world to adapt to your style because statistically, you're outnumbered. And that leads us to the big takeaway. The goal isn't to try and change other people to be more like you. That's exactly what Stir was doing, and it was a total disaster. The real skill, the superpower, is learning how to be flexible, to adjust your style to communicate with people in the way they need to hear it. Once you have these tools, you can start building stronger connections and just be way more effective at work, at home, everywhere. So the real question isn't about these so-called idiots around you. The real question is, which new languages are you willing to learn so you can finally connect with them?